if you don't get rid of shitheads, then your community is full of shitheads.
Sure,
right?
fair enough.
And that's what happens, because if you just let people go wild, I mean, this is one of the reasons I left Canonical, is I was just sick of all the negativity. Like, we'd done a whole bunch of good work to get a bunch of applications in the store and recognition, and there were people out there who were grateful that they could just snap install Discord or snap install whatever application. And there's a bunch of angry nerds on the internet who would have a go every time. And we would work hard. Like, we would work hard for like a year to get an application in the store. And that company would blog about their thing and say, hey, our application's in the Snap Store. And the first comment underneath is, when are you going to have a flat pack? And it's like, Jesus, dude, like, let them have their moment in the sun. They've done a thing. They're happy with their thing. Just give it 5 minutes, right? And there's a lot of negativity. Now, I can understand why, some people are negative about the things Canonical have done in the past, and people have long memories. We could talk about that whole Amazon thing.
Yeah, that.
But that negativity gets to you after a while. And so I just, I didn't want to do that anymore.
Well, I did want to ask you about you leaving Canonical, because I do remember that happening, and there's like a lot of people that took specific things that you said out of context, and this is why he left. He left because of snaps. He left because of this. So, obviously, if there's anything you don't want to say, feel free to just skip it. But like, if you could just briefly run down what it was that was happening at the time that made you want to leave. Was it just the people being negative about it? Was there anything else that was sort of a problem there, or?
So partly it was, I felt like we'd come to a natural point at which the Snap packaging stuff was self-sustaining. Right. So it was, we'd built up decent enough documentation. We've got plenty of examples, no matter what kind of application you built, whether it was an SDL game or a GNOME application or a KDE application or an Electron app or whatever, you could figure out how to make a Snap and publish it in the store, right? And we had thousands of applications with many hundreds of thousands of users, right? So part of me was, okay, I've been doing this for nearly 10 years now. So I was at Canonical for 9 years. I think I'm done with this now. So that was part of it. And yeah, part of it was it's quite demoralizing every time you talk about your work to have angry nerds jump out of the woodwork and have a go at you. And if I could understand if I worked for Nestle and I was going on online forums and saying, hey, look at how we've taken all this water from this groundwater away from these villages and used it to make Coke, or whatever product Nestle make. I can understand if I worked for a super toxic, horrible organization.
I don't know why you use the example of Microsoft, and that would be, I'm sure you come with a better example of Microsoft.
No, I was trying to think of something non-tech.
Sure, like, okay, fair enough.
What if we made drones, or something with weaponized drones or hand grenades or something? Yeah, I get it, right? And I get that people are super tribal. Like, if I worked for BMW, then someone with a Mercedes allegiance would be negative about everything I say. Yeah, I get that. But I think there is this constant negativity in the Linux desktop. People, there's a guy I used to work with, Michael Hall, who worked at Canonical for a long time, and something he often says is, blowing out somebody else's candle doesn't make your candle burn any brighter. Like, you crapping on somebody else's work doesn't make your work better, right? And so when I worked at Canonical, we would always try not to be negative about the competition. And by competition, like all the other distros, we would celebrate a Fedora release. We would tweet about it and say, congratulations on the release of Fedora, whatever, 35 or whatever. I wrote those tweets, right? And I put them on the Ubuntu Twitter account, because I wanted us to celebrate our friends in the Fedora community. I know people who work at Red Hat who work on Fedora, right? I wanted us to celebrate their work. and that was not often reciprocated, in that we would be positive about other things and we tried not to shit on anyone. But that wasn't good enough.
Right.
And I felt like people would constantly crap on Canonical, and I just got tired of it. And
Right.
I would rather work for a company who are making a product that the users of that product like the product and enjoy using the product and enjoy telling people about the use of that project than someone where, if I mention the project, I don't know if it's going to cut the room in half.
Right,
and half of them are going to start throwing tomatoes and half of them are going to be quiet. I gave a talk at a conference years ago, and I asked people to put their hands up, like, are you using, have you heard of Ubuntu? You know, do you use Ubuntu? What do you use if you don't use Ubuntu? And afterwards, multiple people came up to me and said, I use Ubuntu, but I didn't want to put my hand up because I didn't want people to have a go at me because I was using Ubuntu.
Right.
And it's like, that's a shitty position to be in, to have people who are just constantly berating you for your choice of Linux distribution. Like, it's just mental. And so that was the main reason. I just got sick of all the negativity.
Right. Yeah, I sort of like it. It's fun to like poke fun at some of the fun things that have happened throughout history. Like, I did a video about, I don't know if you know this story, but back before the first release of Ubuntu, there was there was a couple of images included with Warty Warthog. The
calendar.
Yeah, okay, you do know it, yes. And I went and did a video.
Yes.
I went and did a video on that situation, and it's a fun situation from the past, but like, I've done videos like very critical of the way that Manjaro has run many of the things they've done, like shipping out many broken updates, shipping out updates for like Asahi Linux, like shipping out Asahi Linux packages without even remotely contacting the developer, not testing on any hardware, patches that could brick hardware. Like, that's, you don't want to be messing around with stuff with like reverse engineered beta software. But I was trying to make it very clear in those videos that I don't care what you run. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a fan of Manjaro, if you're a fan of Ubuntu, if you're a fan of, it doesn't, like, this is not the important thing about how you approach your system. If you feel like Puppy Linux is the greatest thing ever and that does everything you need, that's fine. Go ahead and run it. It doesn't even remotely bother me. There's definitely, I think it is definitely just that tribal thing. Like, you'll see this in, not just in tech, in really anything in life, that people tend to make whatever, especially a lot of like hobby related things, which is for a lot of people what Linux is, try to make these things like a part of their personality. It is a part of their personality that they run Arch Linux, or that they run Pop! OS, or they use AMD cards or Nvidia cards, or they use a PlayStation or an Xbox. But it doesn't matter. Like, that's my main point here. At the end of the day, just don't get on, like, if you don't like what someone's running, just don't use it yourself.
I completely agree. And the analogy that I often use is I don't know what oven you use in your kitchen.
I don't know what oven I use in my kitchen.
And I don't care.
Yeah.
Because it has no bearing on my life, how you heat your food or how you keep your milk cold. It doesn't matter to me. Just the same as I don't care what desktop you use. I don't care if you use GNOME, KDE, Sway, or whatever. It doesn't affect me in my life in any way. But people feel incredibly tribal. I mean, you could say I'm a little bit tribal. I've got Nintendos all around me here. And you know, it's just old stuff to decorate the wall behind me. But yeah, I just don't care enough what other people. I would rather focus on helping people who have problems solve those problems on their desktop if they're using Ubuntu, because I know how to use that. I'll help you, right? And I have helped like countless people over the years solve problems on their desktop. In fact, that's how I got started with Ubuntu, is answering technical support questions. If you go to answers.launchpad.net
Mm-hmm.
/tilde-popey, right? Answers.launchpad.net /tilde-popey. You'll see a bunch of questions. It's a forum, a question and answer forum. Before Stack Exchange existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was how we did technical support. And if you scroll to the bottom, you can go to the last page and you'll find technical support questions in there that I answered in 2006 or something like that.
2005, how to mount the HDD. That is your first one.
There you go. See, and you'll find like some of them are brief, you know, oh, you're holding it wrong, do it like this. And some of them are more detailed, you know, go and get this package, compile this thing and stuff like that. And that's how I got started getting involved in Ubuntu, was answering technical support questions from users who had problems doing stuff with their computer. And I found that super rewarding. In fact, in Launchpad, you get this thing called karma. Every person in Launchpad has karma, and you get karma for answering questions. You get it for reporting bugs, solving bugs, committing code. It was like a motivator thing to try and get, you know, like any of these like useless internet points that get you nothing, right?
Anyone who's used Reddit understands karma.
Yes, exactly. So the first Ubuntu Developer Summit that I ever went to was in Seville in Spain. And I paid my own way. I wasn't sponsored by Canonical to be there. And I was sat in a room with all these developers, most of which I didn't know. I knew them by their IRC nickname or their Launchpad ID. And I had spotted a few friends who I recognized from their little Hackagotchis on their blog, right? And during the opening talk, one of the main guys got up on stage, Kiko, who was Christian Race, who was one of the main developers of Launchpad, stood up and said, have we got Popey in here? Sorry, my doorbell's just gone.
It's all good.
So Kiko gets up on stage and he says, is Popey here? And I was like, oh shit, what have I done? And I stood up and he said, this guy has more karma than anyone else on Launchpad. And because I'd answered so many questions, the algorithm was clearly broken because I had like 1 million karma at the time. Now it ages out over time. If you don't add, it will age out. And I probably have only got like a few thousand or a few hundred because I haven't done it for a while. But what he was doing was recognizing that someone in the community was super active, and I got like a round of applause and the adoration of my fans in the room, or whatever you want to call it. But that felt really nice. Like I was helping people, and as a result, I got recognized in front of my peers and in front of all these developers who I respected, and that felt good. And I really enjoyed that part of Ubuntu, is providing help to people and it getting recognized. And I still do it now. I go on Ask Ubuntu and I answer people's questions. And I still find that a worthwhile use of my time on this planet.
Speaking of Ask Ubuntu, when I had George on, he told me about the post where someone asked if he was a bot. Because he answers so many questions as well that people just assume that it was just some bot answering questions.
I mean, you've met George. He is like a machine.
George ran when he was on. He just ran the show. I didn't talk. He just went off.
He's great. I love George.